My name is Lillian, and for the past 6 years, I've been living in a kind of emotional limbo, not fully alive, not fully dead, just drifting. That's what losing a child does to you. It rewires your brain, rearranges your soul. It doesn't get better. You just learn how to breathe again. Ava was my only daughter, my sunshine, my reason to get up every morning. She had this laugh, not loud, not shrill, but warm, infectious. She was 17, just 2 months away from graduating high school. She wanted to study environmental science and travel the world. She loved plants, animals, and thunderstorms. She once told me that rain reminded her that everything could be washed clean, but nothing could wash away the night I lost her. It happened on a rainy Tuesday evening. She was coming back from a study group. A drunk driver, going nearly 80, ignored a red light and smashed into her car. The impact was so severe that the paramedics said she died instantly. The hospital called me at 11:23 p.m. I remember that exact time because it's the moment the world cracked open. I rushed to the ER, hoping, praying it was a mistake. But by the time I arrived, Ava was already gone. They wouldn't let me see her, said her body had been taken for care. I didn't know what that meant. I couldn't think straight. Everything after that moved like a blur. The hospital staff was kind, but oddly distant. I asked to spend time with her. They said she was no longer in viewing condition. I didn't fight. I should have. But when you're in shock, you don't process things rationally. I just signed papers I didn't understand, nodded when they talked, and somehow by the next day, arrangements were already in motion. I organized a simple funeral, closed casket. They told me it was better that way. Her friends came. My sister flew in. We cried, shared stories, and tried to honor her. But deep down, I felt robbed, like someone had taken more than just my daughter from me. They had taken my goodbye. For years, I tried to move on. I went back to my old job at the library, took long walks in the park, smiled politely when people said, "She's in a better place now." But every night I'd lie awake wondering what really happened during those last moments. Why wasn't I allowed to see her? What exactly did I sign? Then, a few days ago, something strange happened. I was scrolling through social media, not really looking for anything, when I came across a short video clip. A woman, about 25 years old, was standing at a charity event. She was crying, thanking the family who donated the heart that saved her life. She never said a name, but she mentioned the date she received the transplant, the hospital, the donor being a young woman who died in a car crash. My blood ran cold. The date matched, the hospital matched, and as she spoke, I felt something deep inside me shift, a kind of trembling, angry knowing. Could it be? Could my daughter's heart be beating in someone else's chest, and I never knew? I stared at the screen for what felt like hours. Then I replayed the video, again and again. I memorized every word, every pause, every tear. And that night, I opened a box I hadn't touched in years, Ava's death certificate, the hospital release papers, the funeral documents. And what I began to uncover has shaken me to my core. The next morning, I called the hospital. I didn't even know what I was going to say, or ask. I just knew I had to hear something, anything. A woman named Sarah from the records department answered. I asked if it was possible to confirm whether my daughter's organs had been donated. There was a pause, a long one. Then she asked for Ava's full name and date of death. I gave it to her. "Please hold," she said. I waited almost 10 minutes. My hands were trembling. My heart pounded so loud I could barely hear the quiet music playing in the background. When Sarah returned, her tone was different, colder, more formal. "I'm sorry, Ms. Reynolds, but due to confidentiality policies, we cannot disclose donor or recipient information without appropriate legal clearance. I wasn't asking for recipient names, just if Ava's organs had been donated. Still, she wouldn't confirm it." "But I'm her mother," I said, my voice rising. "If her organs were donated, I should have been the one to approve it." "I understand," Sarah replied, but her voice had that rehearsed empathy I've heard before. Unfortunately, once a patient is declared legally deceased, the hospital can act within the parameters of state-approved consent protocols depending on prior registration. What registration? That's when she said something that froze me. According to our files, Ava Reynolds was registered as an organ donor. I couldn't speak. I felt the phone slip slightly from my ear. Ava had never talked about organ donation. We had conversations about everything, from death to college to politics. She never mentioned signing up for that. "Where did you get that information?" I whispered. She didn't answer directly, just repeated that the decision was legally documented and carried out in accordance with hospital guidelines. I ended the call, my heart racing. I couldn't believe it. Ava had been 17, a minor. She wasn't legally allowed to make that decision on her own. She didn't even have a driver's license yet. So how could they claim she was registered? I began digging. First, I called the DMV. They had no record of Ava being listed as a donor. Then I contacted a family lawyer, one I had worked with years ago during my divorce. She agreed to help me understand the paperwork from the hospital. When I scanned the documents I had signed that night, in shock, in pain, she highlighted something chilling. One form included a tiny paragraph, buried halfway down, in legal jargon so dense I hadn't even noticed it. It stated that by signing, I was consenting to post-mortem organ evaluation and potential recovery based on medical eligibility and ethical standards. "Is this even legal?" I asked her. She sighed. "Hospitals use vague language. Technically, you didn't authorize donation, but you also didn't prohibit it." My blood boiled. "So they took that as a yes?" "Maybe," she said softly. "Or maybe they had already decided. Sometimes these decisions happen fast, especially when there's a viable match waiting." I couldn't sleep that night. I kept seeing Ava's face, wondering what they did to her, how fast they moved, if she was treated like a daughter or just a body. And worse, I kept replaying that video of the woman thanking the donor family. Not once did she mention the mother. Not once did she say, "I'm grateful to the parents who made this possible." Because I never made that decision. Someone else did. Someone took my daughter, then took her organs, and never even looked me in the eye. But that's about to change, because now I'm going to find every single person involved, and I'm going to make them tell me the truth. After that night, nothing looked the same to me again. Even holding a cup of coffee made my hands shake. I wasn't just a grieving mother anymore. I had become a woman on a mission for the truth. Who authorized my daughter's organs to be taken? When? How? Under what right? The next morning, I went straight to the hospital. I carried Ava's death certificate, medical reports, and the papers I had been given to sign. I didn't have an appointment, but I didn't care. They tried to stop me at the front desk. I didn't stop walking. "I'm Elaine Reynolds, mother of Ava Reynolds," I said firmly. "Someone needs to explain what happened to my daughter." They eventually directed me to the office of the hospital's ethics committee. A clean, overly sterile waiting room swallowed me for several minutes before the door finally opened. A tall man in a crisp suit stepped in. He looked at me through thin glasses, expression unreadable. "Mr. Whitmore," he introduced himself, offering his hand. "Chairman of the hospital ethics board." I didn't shake it. "You didn't remove her organs without hospital approval," I said coldly. "But you did it without mine. I want to know who did this and how." He sighed as if he had heard this kind of complaint before. "Mrs. Reynolds, first of all, let me say how sorry I am for your loss. Ava's file has been reviewed. The post-mortem process moved quickly, yes, but all steps followed standard medical and legal protocol." "I never gave any consent," I snapped. He opened a file and pointed to a page. "But here, this is your signature on the release forms." I looked down at the page. That night, I was covered in blood, my vision blurred with tears. They gave me papers, and I signed them. I didn't read a word. The form said something about autopsy and organ compatibility screening. But did that count as consent? "You gave her heart to a stranger," I whispered. "While I was planning her funeral, you were carving her apart." Mr. Whitmore lowered his voice. The transplant network runs on urgency. Every minute can be the difference between life and death for someone on a waiting list. And then, the image came back. That woman on the news, sobbing with joy, clutching her chest where Ava's heart now beat. Meanwhile, I had held my child's lifeless body, not knowing parts of her were already gone. "This is unbelievable," I said. "Ava was 17, a minor. I had the final say." "In some states," Whitmore replied, "minors can indicate organ donor status when applying for a learner's permit. Ava had submitted such a form." "She never got that license," I said flatly. "She told me she was scared of the exam. She died before she ever took it." He closed the file. "I understand this is incredibly painful, but your daughter's gift saved lives." "And what about mine?" I asked, barely breathing. "Who saves me?" He said nothing. I walked out, but I didn't let it go. That night I reviewed every document again. And that's when I saw it. Something off. One of the forms had Ava's signature on it, dated 2 days after her death. That's when I realized this wasn't just a bureaucratic failure, it was something deeper. Maybe forged paperwork, maybe fraud, or worse. There was only one thing left to do now: find the truth, no matter what it costs me. I didn't sleep that night. I sat at the kitchen table until sunrise, surrounded by papers, photos of Ava, and an aching silence that seemed to scream louder than any voice. I couldn't stop staring at that date, 2 days after Ava's death. A signature that shouldn't exist. Who signed it? Why? And more importantly, how had no one noticed? By 7 a.m., I was outside the Department of Motor Vehicles with a copy of Ava's learner's permit application. The clerk behind the counter was hesitant at first, until I mentioned the name of a reporter I had been speaking to. Suddenly, she was cooperative. "Ava Reynolds, date of birth, 2006. Application filed March 11th. She read from her computer screen. "That's impossible," I whispered. "Ava died on March 9th. The clerk's hands froze over the keyboard. I'm going to get a supervisor." Within minutes, I was sitting with a manager who confirmed the same horrifying thing. According to their system, Ava had applied for her learner's permit 2 days after her death, with a digital signature included. I asked for a printed copy and left the office shaking. Either their system was wrong, or someone had added Ava's donor consent posthumously. Back home, I opened Ava's laptop. I knew her passwords. I checked her emails, her documents, her texts. Nothing mentioned signing a donor form, applying for a permit, or even an appointment at the DMV. She had made no plans to go. The idea that someone had impersonated her, it made my skin crawl. I contacted the reporter I'd spoken with before, Maya Brooks, a local journalist who covered hospital scandals and medical ethics. She remembered me, and more importantly, she believed me. "Elaine, if what you're saying is true," she said on the phone, "this could be bigger than just a clerical error. There are rumors, whispers really, about certain hospitals fast-tracking organ harvesting through unofficial channels. If there's proof, I want in." We met later that day at a coffee shop. I showed her the documents. Her eyes widened when she saw the post-mortem signature. "This shouldn't exist," she said. "It looks digitally added, like someone used her old signature file and time-stamped it manually." I asked her, "But why would someone do that?" Maya looked up at me slowly. "Because transplant centers are under immense pressure. Organ quotas, performance incentives, private donations. It all adds up. One more heart, one more liver, one more miracle. Even if it means bending the rules." That night, Maya called me again. "There's someone I want you to meet," she said. "He used to work at the same hospital Ava died in. He left under murky circumstances." The next evening, I met him, Dr. Lucas Vance, a former trauma surgeon. He looked haunted before I even said a word. "You're Ava's mother?" he asked. I nodded. "I warned them this would happen," he whispered. "I told them pushing forms through grieving parents, faking timestamps, using minors' digital files, it would all come crashing down one day." My blood went cold. "You're saying this has happened before?" Dozens of times, he replied. Most families never find out. And the organs? I asked. Where do they go? Sometimes to the registry, sometimes to private clients, wealthy families, people who pay to skip the waiting list. I stared at him, horrified. You think Ava's death was an accident? He said softly. But I think it was an opportunity. I felt like I couldn't breathe. Dr. Vance's words echoed in my head as I sat alone in my car, gripping the steering wheel like it was the only thing tethering me to reality. You think Ava's death was an accident, but I think it was an opportunity. It was the kind of sentence that doesn't just shake you, it changes you. The next morning, I walked into the hospital where Ava had died. My palms were sweating. I wasn't sure what I was looking for, but I knew I couldn't leave without something. Something that told me Dr. Vance wasn't just a paranoid former employee. I asked to see Ava's full medical file. The receptionist told me it wasn't available without a formal request. I gave her one. Handwritten, signed, dated, and followed up by an email to the hospital's records department. That same night, Maya called me. You're not going to believe this, she said. I just got access to a whistleblower tip about that hospital. It includes a list of names, dozens of underage patients who died under suspicious circumstances, and Ava is on it. I sat down on my bed. What do you mean suspicious? Parents who say they were rushed, consent they never gave, sudden changes in condition right after being declared stable. She paused. Elaine, I think Ava was targeted. My hands were shaking. Targeted how? There's a system, she said quietly. It flags potential organ donors based on age, health, blood type, and family status. If the family is grieving and vulnerable, if the child is young and healthy, they get marked. You mean like a checklist? Exactly. 2 days later, I received Ava's hospital file. Hundreds of pages of charts, medication logs, scan reports. But one section stood out, a note from an attending physician that read, Patient stable. Observe for 48 hours before reevaluation. That note was time-stamped just 3 hours before Ava was declared brain dead. I called Dr. Vance immediately. That note, he said, I remember writing it. You wrote it? I asked, stunned. Yes. Ava was showing signs of recovery. I ordered a hold on any surgical intervention. So how did she die? There was silence. Then he whispered, My signature was removed from the system the next morning, and a new note was added, one I never wrote. I dropped the phone. Someone had overridden the medical system. They'd deleted his order to wait and replaced it with an authorization to harvest. Maya reached out to her contacts in medical ethics. They confirmed something horrifying. There was a backdoor protocol in some hospitals where donors could be prioritized without formal family consent, using implied intent laws. They claim if someone ever mentioned organ donation, even casually, it's enough, she said. Ava wrote a school paper 2 years ago about helping people. They're using that. I sat in silence. Ava had been a bright, compassionate soul. Of course she believed in helping others, but that didn't mean she gave permission to be cut open without my knowledge. I looked at the death certificate again. It didn't list the cause as an accident. It simply said, trauma-induced brain death. Time of death, 4:37 a.m. The same minute her organs were removed, and just like that, I knew. Ava didn't die. She was taken. I wasn't sleeping anymore. Not really. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Ava's face, her gentle smile, her fingers wrapped around mine, the last hug she gave me before everything went dark. And now, knowing what had really happened, I couldn't rest until someone paid for it. I needed proof. Real proof. Not speculation or suspicion. Something undeniable. So I went back to the hospital. This time, I wasn't polite. I requested to meet with the hospital administrator. His name was Richard Langdon, a tall man with thin lips and cold eyes. He smiled like a salesman when I introduced myself, but the smile faded the moment I said my daughter's name. I'm sorry for your loss, he said, too rehearsed, too hollow. I handed him a copy of Dr. Vance's original observation note and said calmly, Why was this removed from the official file? He didn't even look surprised. Sometimes there are technical errors in the system. Errors that delete a doctor's orders and authorize surgery without consent? He blinked just once. Mrs. Moore, I assure you, the hospital followed all standard procedures. That's when I saw it. His poker face cracking. Just for a second. He knew, I knew. When I left, Maya was waiting for me in the parking lot. He's lying, she said immediately. I found something. She pulled out her phone and showed me an email. It had been leaked by an anonymous employee, an internal hospital communication from a month before Ava's death. The subject line read, Priority Organ Acquisition Candidates, June cycle, and Ava's name was on that list. I felt like vomiting. They'd already labeled her a donor before the accident even happened, which meant they were watching us, tracking her, waiting for an opportunity. That night, I went through every photo, every video I had of Ava. I don't know why. Maybe I was trying to hold on to pieces of her. Maybe I was looking for signs that I'd missed something, anything. And then I found it. A video I'd taken just 2 weeks before her death. Ava was in the backyard, jumping on the trampoline, laughing. But in the background, behind the fence, I saw a man. Standing still, watching. I zoomed in. Grainy, shadowed, but clearly someone in scrubs. The next morning, I called the police and reported everything. The altered medical record, the unauthorized procedure, the surveillance. They opened a case, but told me it could take weeks, months even. And unless I had solid evidence of intent, it would be hard to prosecute. But I didn't have months. I had my daughter's memory screaming for justice. Maya came over that evening with a new lead. I found someone who used to work in procurement, she said. He's scared, but he'll talk, off the record. I met him in an old bookstore 2 towns away. He was pale, fidgety, and wouldn't give me his name. They choose kids like Ava because they're young, healthy, and unlikely to survive traumatic events, he whispered. The hospital makes a call. A private donor pays a facilitation fee, and everything happens fast. I felt the blood drain from my face. You mean someone paid to take my daughter's organs? He nodded. They don't call it that, but yes. I left that bookstore with shaking hands and a burning fire in my chest. I would find out who signed off on that list, who paid, who watched, who erased the signature, because I wasn't just a grieving mother anymore. I was a storm coming. The bookstore meeting haunted me. Everything the former procurement officer said echoed in my head like a siren I couldn't turn off. Facilitation fee, paid donor lists, targeting children like Ava. I couldn't sleep. I couldn't eat. I could barely look at another parent without wondering, do they know how easily it could be their child too? The next morning, Maya and I sat down with every document we'd gathered. Emails, messages, medical forms, reports. We cross-checked names, looked for patterns. One name kept appearing in the financial documents, Elara Biomedical Trust, a non-profit listed as a donor support group. But it wasn't just supporting families, it was funneling money into the hospital. Quietly, strategically. Maya dug deeper and found that Elara had been connected to 4 other hospitals, all under investigation for unauthorized donor practices. It's a shell organization, she said. They exist to make payouts look like grants or donations. We traced one specific transaction, a large sum transferred just days before Ava's operation. It wasn't listed under organ procurement. It was labeled Emergency Response Sponsorship. The recipient? A doctor I'd never heard of, Dr. Leonard Beck. I searched his name and my stomach dropped. He wasn't part of Ava's care team. He didn't even work at the hospital full-time. He was what they called a facilitator, someone who coordinated between private donors and surgical teams. I printed out his photo. It was the man from my backyard video, the one watching Ava. I had everything I needed, the names, the money trail, the footage, but I still felt powerless. Maya urged me to go public. "You're not just a grieving mother anymore, Elaine," she said. "You're the only one who can stop this." It terrified me, but I thought of Ava, how her voice used to ring through the house, how she used to say, "You can fix anything, Mom." So I did it. I sat down in front of my laptop and recorded the truth. I told the world everything about Ava's accident, about the organ donation I never consented to, about the shadowy doctor in my backyard, about Elara Biomedical Trust, and the money that changed hands right before they cut her open. The video went viral, people shared it, news outlets picked it up, other families began to speak out, parents who had doubts, suspicions, missing pieces of their own tragedies. It wasn't just me. A federal investigation was launched, subpoenas were issued, Dr. Leonard Beck was arrested trying to leave the country, his bank accounts were frozen, his passport revoked, Elara Biomedical was shut down, the hospital's board was replaced, new protocols were introduced nationwide, requiring recorded verbal and written consent for all donor cases. It didn't bring Ava back, nothing ever could. But the day the district attorney called to say they were charging 6 people in connection with Ava's unauthorized organ harvesting, I wept. Not just for justice, but because for the first time since losing her, I didn't feel like a victim. I felt like her mother again.